Max Holloway is the main talking point of UFC 300 after that last second knockout over Justin Gaethje. After an unreal performance by Max Holloway when he was the underdog, myself included, I really didn't give Max Holloway much of a chance going up against Justin Gaethje. I know how good Max Holloway was, but I did think originally that it was a stylistic nightmare for Max Holloway. You know, Justin Gaethje hits like a truck, very drawable, and he has amazing leg kicks. And he wasn't really able to find much success. The only success he has was the leg kicks, but Max Holloway just kind of firmed them. I don't know how he was able to do so, but he managed to do it. And he was able to box the bleeding head off him against Justin Gaethje. And Gaethje really didn't have an answer, and in the last 10 seconds of the fight, he pointed to the ground, he risked it all, he was up on the scorecards, but he still decided to risk it all, just like he did a few years prior against Ricardo Lamas. And he knocked him out in the last second, and it's kind of crazy considering everyone used to say that Max Holloway has pillow fist, you know, he's not able to finish fighters. And that wasn't the case. He moved up in weight. He knocked out Justin Gaethje. In his last fight against the Korean Zombie, he was able to knock out the Korean Zombie with, I think it was a similar shot, the overhand right. And now everyone's talking about Max Holloway. Who should he fight next? So I thought it would be a great idea to discuss the 5 opponents that Max Holloway could fight next. We may as well start off with the obvious, and that is Ilia Topuria. Now, if this fight happened, oh my god, this would be an unreal fight. I don't think anyone would be against this fight because it's guaranteed violence. 2 people with solid hands. You know, Ilia Topuria's got that aura about him right now. He's just knocked out Volkanovski. You know, his confidence must be an all-time high right now. And Max Holloway is, again, everyone's talking about him right now. And I think this fight would be an absolute banger. Now, the only reason I'll be against this fight is because I feel like Volkanovski deserves an immediate rematch. The only thing there, will he be ready in time for when the UFC wants Ilia back in the octagon? I don't really know. I don't want Ilia sitting on the sidelines waiting for Volkanovski necessarily, because Ilia Topuria is late 20s. He's got plenty of time, and obviously he might be in his prime right now, and I want to see him very frequently. I don't want him waiting for another fighter, as much as I do agree that Volkanovski deserves an immediate title shot. You know, he deserves that rematch. He very well deserves it. But Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria, that would make a lot of sense. And if it happened in Spain, I am booking some tickets right away. I don't know how I would get tickets, but I need to make sure I get them because that fight would be absolute cinema. Now, I don't know how this fight would go, but it'll be an absolute banger. And again, that's guaranteed. I feel like it's a 50-50 matchup, and that's what makes it 10 times more interesting. You know, when a fight's like, you know who the winner's going to be, it's not as interesting. You maybe look for the underdog win, but when it's a 50-50 fight, it's like your eyes are glued on it, even if it's a boring fight, because you need to know who's going to win that fight, and it's so much harder to predict it. I don't know who wins that. I'm going to flip-flop on the outcome of that for a while if it does get made. Hopefully it does. But I feel like that's the front runner for the fight that will be made for Max Holloway next. The next suggestion is the fight I want to see the most. It is a rematch. The first fight happened over a decade ago, and that's the rematch between Conor McGregor and Max Holloway. This fight happened when Max Holloway, I think, was 21, and McGregor just entered the UFC. I think he tore his ACL and was able to go to a decision win against Max Holloway. Holloway being the only one at that point to take McGregor to decision. Again, he was 21 years old. He's much more improved, as well as Conor. He's improved a lot more as well. And I just think this will be a very interesting fight. Now, I do believe that this fight would have been a lot more interesting a few years ago. You know, we don't know what McGregor's going to be like now. But say if this was like 2018 time, it would have been a hard fight to predict. But right now, I think everyone would favour Max Holloway. But I still think it will be a very, very, very entertaining fight. Would McGregor be the first person to be able to put away Max Holloway? I'm not quite sure, but he definitely has the power for that and the accuracy. But again, I don't know, like, this would sell really well as well, you know what I mean? This would do really good numbers. I think the build-up would be quite fun. I think Max Holloway, you know, he's humble, But he doesn't mind throwing out some one-liners. You saw it against Brian Ortega. You saw a bit of it against Volkanovski, against was it Khabib when they did a press conference. He doesn't mind throwing some verbal out there from time to time, and I think he would against Conor McGregor. And I think it would just be again a very entertaining fight, and it would do really good numbers. This is a fight I've wanted for so long now, and again maybe now isn't the best time compared to what it could have been a few years ago, but I still think it will be a very, very solid fight and a very entertaining fight. The next fight is another title fight, and that is against Islam Makhachev. Obviously, Justin Gaethje could have been the next one for Islam Makhachev if he didn't take that Max Holloway fight. A lot of people thought that, Justin Gaethje deserved a crack at the title after beating Dustin Poirier and Rafael Fiziev, and he never got it because he decided to fight Max Holloway and obviously got knocked out clean. Now that Max Holloway just knocked out the guy who should have really been the number one contender for Islam Makhachev, why not do Max Holloway versus Islam Makhachev? Now, I don't mind this fight, but I think Makhachev beats him. It's just the grappling side of things. I feel like Makhachev would just wipe the floor. I think on the feet, Max Holloway would cause a lot of problems, but Islam Makhachev is a big 155er, a very big 155er who can mix it all in. Max Holloway would have a chance, and obviously he's found some knockout power. I think that's more came from when he plants his feet with his shots now. But regardless, I don't give him much of a chance against Islam Makhachev like I do Conor McGregor, like I do Ilia Topuria, I really don't think he would. But it would be, if he was able to, fuck me. He gave us a UFC 300 banger, and then he gave us a massive underdog win against Islam Makhachev. That would be mega. He certifies himself as a double champ. It would be very good for his legacy, and I genuinely wouldn't argue against it. But I could definitely see that fight happening, given the winner of Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier, and what Max Holloway wants to do next. Let's say that Volkanovski comes back a bit earlier than he should do, takes the rematch against Ilia Topuria, then it wouldn't surprise me if the UFC did Max Holloway versus Islam Makhachev. I do think it will be an alright fight, but for the most part, I feel like Islam Makhachev would dominate Max Holloway with his grappling. Now we move on to what would be a third fight between the two, and that is obviously Dustin Poirier against Max Holloway. Listen, if Poirier is able to do the unthinkable and, take that title away from Islam Makhachev, why not do this fight? That second fight was an absolute banger, and everyone knows the story of that second fight. Dustin Poirier won, but Max Holloway, I think he took it on like 6 weeks' notice, which means he had to build up to 155, and he wasn't able to do so. He looked like he was, had the frame and build of a 145er. Instead of, the one where he had against Justin Gaethje. Against Justin Gaethje, he had a full training camp, 10 weeks, and was able to build his frame for the 155 division, whereas when he fought Dustin Poirier in that rematch, he wasn't able to do that. And I feel like Holloway was the better fighter, but every time Dustin Poirier landed against Max Holloway, it just, it was just such a big power difference. And it just, Max Holloway didn't react well to the shots at all. There was a big power difference there. And I feel like now the outcome would be a lot different. I think people forget in that second fight as well, Max Holloway sunk in a submission in the last 10 seconds. I can't remember which round it was. I think the third. I think it was a Darce choke, and it was really sunk in, but the bell had just saved Dustin Poirier. I think Max Holloway has all the tools to beat Dustin Poirier, and I wouldn't be against a third fight between the two. I know that Dustin Poirier is 2-0 up against Max Holloway, but so is Volkanovski. In the first fight, what happened between Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway happened many moons ago. Again, Dustin Poirier was quite young, and so was Max Holloway. I think he was 20 or 21 years old, something stupid like that. He got the submission win, and I just think this fight, I just wouldn't mind it at all. Again, it's guaranteed to be a banger, pure violence, and I wouldn't mind seeing this. Say Dustin Poirier gets the win against Islam Makhachev, has the title, then Max Holloway challenges, tries to become a double champ, and he might be able to do so. Even if Dustin Poirier loses to Islam Makhachev, I wouldn't mind seeing this fight. Probably wouldn't make the most sense compared to other fights, but I still wouldn't argue against it. And then finally, we're going to go with Charles the Bronx. Now, I know Charles just lost to Arman Sarukian, and I have suggested that Charles move up to the 170 division. But who wouldn't love this rematch? Two fighters who've made clear improvements. You know, Max Holloway was able to stop Charles Oliveira. When Charles Oliveira, you know, people used to say he liked to quit a lot. And he got a shoulder injury or arm injury. And, you know, I'm not going to say he gave up because I feel like that's disrespectful. But that's kind of what he did. And I'd love to see a rematch between the two now. You know, Charles Oliveira has improved a load. You know, his striking's came on loads. He doesn't really quit now. He just like, I don't know, he firms a lot more things. Like, he gets dropped a lot, but he comes back. He doesn't mind coming back. And I'd love to see a fight between the two because I feel like Max Holloway's better on the stand-up, but I think Charles has kind of closed the gap on that, when it comes in terms of skill. And the grappling, again, would Charles use his grappling against Max like he usually does? I feel like he would, and he might be able to cause some problems for Max Holloway. Now, would this fight make sense? I don't really know, but again, I wouldn't mind this at all. I feel like this fight's more of a shot in the dark, but again, I wouldn't mind it at all. I think it would be very entertaining. Two fan favourites going at it. A very entertaining fight, in my opinion. And, you know, the winner of this may be back into the title picture, well, for at least for Charles Oliveira. But whoever wins this, you know, maybe gets a title shot or whatever. I think that would be quite fair enough. But I wouldn't mind seeing this fight at all. And I have been asking for this fight for a while. But unfortunately, I don't think we'll get to see these two fight again. Now, if you have enjoyed the video, maybe consider leaving a like and maybe consider subscribing to my channel where we talk about more MMA topics. Thank you for tuning in for this video.